All right, the music's off. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. Just wanted to go over tonight. I actually set this slideshow up a long time ago for doing this study, and I just thought I'd go through it. Basically, this is the Olivet Discourse. So Matthew 24 and 25, Mark 13, and Luke 21. This is the recording of Jesus explaining to his disciples what the end of the day is going to look like. I'm rolling over. Okay. And so it's recorded 3 different times. Again, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. Just going to go through it quickly. I don't know how long this will take. There's not a ton of differences. We'll just kind of point that out. I don't really have an exact plan, so I think what I'll probably do let's see, I think I'll probably read from Mark. I feel like Mark, except for where Mark doesn't have something, uh, Mark tends to be a little bit shorter than everybody else. I'm not a history scholar at all. I don't know lots of details about the background, any of this. I may get uh, some chime ins from my left over here, but we'll just dive right in here. Starting in Mark 13, then as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Teacher, see what manner of stones and buildings are here?" And Jesus answered and said to him, "Did you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left standing upon another. They shall all be that shall not be thrown down." Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, uh, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of all these things being fulfilled?" And before I go to the next slide, just look at the question here. The question asked is, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming? There's three questions actually. So, when will these things happen? When will these things be? What will be the sign when these things are fulfilled? And you can kind of see it in Matthew, and of the end of the age. Now, so far, it doesn't look like they've really tied. I don't know for sure that this is the sign of your. Oh, no, I wanted to select text. That didn't work. Uh, what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Is that two questions? Is that one question? We'll see as we move through. How does Jesus approach that? But you don't see the question worded quite the same way. So Matthew, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Mark, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? See no mention of Jesus's second coming, no mention of the end of the age here. Just when will these things be, and these things being, when will these buildings, the temple, be thrown to the ground? And Luke records even less. He's like, when will these things happen? And what sign will there be when these things are about to take place? So in Luke, you see that they wanted to know when, and they wanted to know how to know ahead of time, in the immediate sense, right? Like how can they wanted to be able to know when it's coming. And Jesus answered them, answering them, began to say, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and will deceive many. But when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled, for such things must happen, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows." Let's see, do they get, how different is it? These look very similar. "Take heed, no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, and I must he would deceive many. Wars, rumors of wars, all these things must happen, but the end is not yet." So basically the same. So Matthew records it as nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and then famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. Mark records it as nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, earthquakes, famines, and troubles. And Luke is very similar to Matthew. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes, famines, and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. So Luke adds fearful sights and great signs from heaven, but omits these are the beginnings of sorrows that both Matthew and Mark have. Let's see. So Jesus starts off, and he just says there's going to be all these different things, right? Pestilences, famines, earthquakes, wars, rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. All of these things are going to happen, and the end is not yet. One aside, and I guess I could probably pull up a screen share, and maybe I will do that. I'm going to pull up a screen share real quick on this nation against nation. I've heard it taught. Now, I don't know for sure, but I have heard it taught. Mark 13. That nation there actually is, I guess, the word ethnos. And so could mean that it's actually going to be racial tension as well as like geopolitical tension. So, all right, I've got Blue Letter pulled up here. Let me see if I can figure out how to add a screen. Share screen. I'll add this tab. All right, it does look like it's sharing. Let's see, can I zoom in? I can, look at that. Oh, maybe too far, but maybe not. Man, I can really read this. This is nice. For nation, it is ethnos. Let's see, what does that word mean? Kind of seems obvious. We'll go look at the root word here in a minute. A multitude, whether of men or beasts, associated or living together. So that's the primary usage of the word ethnos. It's kind of a weird thing, but yeah, that's what it is. It is. Second is a multitude of individuals of the same nature or genus, the human family, a tribe, nation, people group. In the Old Testament, foreign nations who did not worship the one true God, pagans and Gentiles. And Paul uses the term for Gentile Christians. Ooh, that's an interest. I think we're seeing that now. I don't know that that's what the text means, but I think right now we see. I guess I only see Gentile Christians, but I think we see these people, the Gentile Christians, fighting all the time. Let's see. Probably, I think that's the root word, a race, a tribe, especially a foreign non-Jewish one, usually by implication pagan, Gentile, heathen nation. Okay, I guess how do we interpret it here though? I guess they interpret it as nation here, and I guess that's fine. That's just interesting. I've heard this taught that what we should really see here is going to be an ethnic battle between, I guess in the American context, whites versus blacks or something like that. I don't know. That's just what I've heard taught. Other than that, no big differences here between the three. I remember making this. It got difficult to fit all these different sections in that I chopped it up into. Let's see. Mark's actually the long one here. But watch out for yourselves, for they will deliver you up to councils, and you will be beaten in the synagogues. You will be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them. And the gospel must first be preached to all the nations. But when they arrest you and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand or premeditate what you will speak. But whatever is given you in that hour, speak that, for it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. Now brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end shall be saved. Let's look and see what the differences are. So Matthew has, they'll deliver you up and kill and to tribulation and kill you. You will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Just a quick little aside, that tribulation right there, I wonder if we were to look that up, would we find that that's also a word for like a tribunal, right? Deliver you up to councils, put you in front of a tribunal, rather than, or not exclusively, like suffering tribulation. Like, can that just be a way of saying councils there? You'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake, and then many will be offended. They will betray one another and will hate one another. Matthew seems to have this where Mark doesn't. I don't know if Luke does. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as witness to the nations, and then the end will come. And real quick, just go look at Luke. But before all these things, they will lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons. That's a thing to take note of right there. So, deliver you up to the synagogues and prisons. Excuse me. If all of this wasn't resolved in AD 70, if this is in any way a future thing, delivering you up to synagogues, I think one of our enemies, so to speak, is going to be people who look like us, talk like us, call themselves us. It's interesting, and I'm not really making a statement on this, but it is interesting that it does look like we are heading towards a deliberately religious nationalism. And those people occasionally threaten to, I think it's drown the Baptists. But anyways, I'll go a different direction. You'll be brought before kings and rulers for not my name's sake, but it will turn out for you as an occasion for testimony. Therefore, settle in your hearts not to meditate beforehand on what you will answer, for I'll give you a mouth and wisdom which your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. You're going to win the argument, it seems like. But you will be betrayed even by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but not a hair on your head will be lost. By your patience, possess your souls. So they do all close in this section with basically the same idea. You have to endure to the end by your patience, right? Like, this is a marathon. I think Luke is pretty different. I think the synagogues thing is important. I think we tend to expect an atheistic or a secular persecution. I think Scripture really points. It's all very religious in nature. Love many will grow cold. And so you see the mention here of the gospel will be preached. Now, I think the others add that in the next section, and there should be a little purple, but maybe not. So continues on. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let the reader understand, then those who are in Judea should flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down into the house, nor enter to take anything out of his house. Let him who is in the field not go back to get clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. Matthew looks at it, says, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Don't go into your house. Don't go back to get your clothes, and don't be pregnant or nursing babies. Luke words it differently. Luke says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. Let those who are in the country enter there. That's a weak enter her. Must have chopped off a letter, I guess. For those days are the days of vengeance. All these things written will be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and nursing babies. So I think in Matthew and Mark, it seems very clear that whoever is intended to read or have heard this sermon is also expected or can expect to see the abomination of desolation. And it looks like at the same time, Jerusalem will be surrounded by armies. Let me see if I can get a, I'm not a, I'm not a geographer at all. I am going to pull up Israel on a map here just because I think it's interesting when you realize that Jerusalem is inside the country of Israel. If Jerusalem is surrounded, that means they've gotten in. So let me try to share that tab real quick. Present, share screen, Google Maps tab, share. All right. Let's see if it's not really better. All right, all right, so here's Jerusalem. Can I put a red mark there? I can do it that way. Nope. All right. So it's the map we've got. So Jerusalem, right, is in the inside of Israel. It's not a coastal town, though it is, I guess, the first thing from the coast there. Coming from, who is that? It's got to be Jordan, I think, because that's the West Bank. The West Bank is Jordan. Anyways, yeah, I'm not a geography person at all. But so Jerusalem is going to be surrounded. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. So Jerusalem's going to be surrounded. They're going to be inside the borders of Israel. I think that's important to know. And when you see the abomination of desolation, now what is that? That, as best I understand it, that's in Daniel, and that is when the Antichrist, I guess, and please correct me if you're listening over there if I get this a little wrong. When the Antichrist stands in the temple, proclaims himself to be God or to be above everything that claims to be God, demanding to be worshipped. And that is also tied in with the mark, right? Like the abomination, like, does that event happen prior to the mark in Revelation 13? Do you know? You think that's after the mark? Right, he makes statue talk. Then demands that you bow down and worship. Well, I mean, that's why you shouldn't be pregnant or nursing babies. So what Ashley was saying is that, and she stays in Revelation a lot. He's going to demand worship, and when he gets it, all hell is going to break loose. So this, for a lot of people, they tend to see this as the midpoint, right? This is at the beginning of the last 3.5 years, the Great Tribulation. The middle of the 7 years. Now, the 7 years, like in Scripture, that's a covenant that is confirmed. Like it's not it doesn't seem to me like that there is a biblical or scriptural 7 years, as much as a biblical character is going to confirm a covenant with many. That covenant will be for 7 years, and they will breach that covenant in the halfway, in the middle of that. I don't know, not to say that the 7 isn't not like it's a thing that's defined, but I don't think the tribulation isn't 7 years. As a matter of fact, those first 3.5 years, again, correct me if I'm wrong, are going to be a high degree of peace and safety and security. It'll mostly only be dangerous to be a Christian, according to Ashley. So that's interesting. So, again, whoever is taking this in is supposed to be aware of these things and on the lookout for it. So whoever it is going to be here. I think that's interesting. Now we're getting to where there's a real difference. Like there's text that just doesn't exist in Luke. Let's see, was there anything else worth covering there? Go to the mountains. Um, I think this is a very localized thing too. Like those who are in Judea should flee to the mountains. If you're, for example, in Galax, Virginia, or Hickory, North Carolina, or wherever, I mean, the mountains are cool and all, and you should go to the mountains, but I don't think you need to run to the mountains when you see Jerusalem surrounded. People in Jerusalem or Judea need to flee to the mountains. Now, where's Judea? And can I share that tab? Real quick, I'll click over here and see if we can determine where Judea is relative to, man, I guess Google's probably not. Judea. Oh. Well, it kind of zoomed in, but it didn't really show me where it is. See if we can figure out where these mountains are. I'm not sure I'm learning much there. Maybe come back to it. Keep the map up. Go back to this. All right, so moving to the next slide. And pray that your flight might not be in winter, for in those days there will be tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of creation, which God created until this time, nor shall ever be, or nor ever shall be. And unless the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he chose, he shortened those days. Then, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or look, he is there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. But take heed. See, I have told you all these things beforehand. We see Luke doesn't have that second paragraph. Let's check Matthew and see what they say. See what he said. Pray that's not in winter or the Sabbath. There will be a great tribulation, has not been since the beginning, never will be. Those days will be shortened. No flesh will be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. If anyone says, look, here's Christ, look, here's Christ, false prophets, signs and wonders, if possible, to deceive even the elect. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, don't go out, look, he is in the rooms, don't believe it. So Luke omits that. Real quick, working through here. Again, this is talking about the people who are in Judea, that their flight to the mountains might not be in winter. So it's going to get worse. Like at that point, when you see Jerusalem surrounded, it's been bad up until that point, but it's going to be worse. But it says, for the sake of the elect. For the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. If it were possible, they would even be the elect would even be deceived. Whoever the elect are going to be here during this period. So Jerusalem surrounded, or is probably being besieged throughout this process. Now Luke doesn't have any of that. And we get some warnings here, right? So I think when Jesus tells us this, we need to be on the lookout. If anybody says to you, look, here's the Christ, or there, don't believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders, to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And you see here in Mark, here is the Christ. Look, he is here. Jesus is like the text is indicating, and Jesus is saying, I think, people are going to tell, like, Jesus is here. Like that's going to be a big part of the deception. And that's why, we're working towards the verses where Jesus is going to tell us how to identify whether or not it's really him. But here he's telling us, look, they're going to tell you, Jesus is here. The Christ is here. He's over here. He's in the desert. He's over here in this church. He's in this building in the inner room. See, I've told you beforehand, like, don't be deceived. This is Jesus' constant refrain. Anytime he talks about the last days, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. Always, always what he says. So Mark's short here. But in those days after that tribulation, so after Jerusalem has been surrounded, after you should have run to the mountains from Judea, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars of heaven will fall, and the powers in heaven will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Check Matthew. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall, and heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And Luke records it as signs in the sun, moon, and stars, earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and waves roaring, men's heart failing them for fear, and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. So after that period of tribulation, after Jerusalem's been surrounded, after the Judeans have ran to the mountains, the sun is going to be darkened, the moon's not going to give its light, the stars of heaven will fall, and the powers in heaven will be shaken. There's going to be it's going to be craziness in the sky. The sun being dark, but that's very disruptive, and it's probably not just for Jerusalem, right? If the sun's darkened in Jerusalem, it's probably darkened in everywhere else that it should be sunny at that time of day, whenever that is. Stars falling. I don't even know what to really make of that, right? It's is that like comets and meteorites? Is it falling to Earth? Because I don't want to be wherever that stuff is falling for sure. And then, so here Matthew says, as lightning comes from the east to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. I think that's to indicate it's going to be like when Jesus comes, it's going to be all of a sudden. And then everybody's going to see it. And we see that repeated over here. The sign of Son of Man will appear, then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they, who is they? All the tribes of the earth. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And this, if you take it back to what Jesus just warned you about in the last couple of sentences, if the Jesus they're telling you is here isn't the Jesus that everybody saw coming on the clouds like lightning, all of a sudden everybody's aware. If it's a Jesus who's in a building somewhere, if he's out in the desert, don't believe it, right? Jesus told you beforehand, don't believe it. Here is how you can identify Jesus when he comes. This is Jesus's words. This would all be read if we were looking in a red letter Bible. It's all read here. So that take note of that. Let's see, I don't know how many slides I've got. It's the last one. Now there's other text. I may bring up some more. And then the last section here, everybody's got it. And then he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the farthest part of the earth to the farthest part of heaven. Matthew, and he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. So this is the rapture event, right? This is when Jesus sends his angels at the last trumpet to gather his elect from the four winds of the earth. That's when that happens. That's when Jesus says it happens. I know there's a lot of different teachings on it. Jesus finishes it all up, and he says, Jerusalem's going to be surrounded. People in Judea are going to flee to the mountains. There's going to be great tribulation. The sun's going to be darkened. The moon's not going to give its light. The stars of heaven are going to fall. Jesus is going to show up on the clouds. And then he's going to send his angels out with the trumpet to gather his elect from the four winds, from the farthest points to the, presumably to him, right? And my personal understanding on this is basically this is a very, very, very fast trip with a short layover in the sky to Jerusalem, right? Because I guess it's Jerusalem. Is that where, when Jesus comes down, he's coming to the Battle of Armageddon? It's basically Jerusalem, right? It's just outside of Jerusalem. All right, so Jesus comes out on the clouds, right? The sun has been dark, the moon has been dark. It's been craziness for probably like a long time now, right? At least 3.5 years. He comes, he gathers his elect. The trumpet blow happens. Now, this may or may not, doesn't seem to include the resurrection, right? And I think that when we look at Revelation, we're going to see that when the resurrection happens, and this isn't it. But he's going to gather his elect. This is, we won't all die, but we'll all be changed. We're going to go to meet him and come down with him for that battle in Armageddon, the Valley of Armageddon. That's a place in Israel. It's not just like a word for the end. It's an actual location. We know where it's going to take place. But that's when he sends his angels out with the sound of a trumpet, and they'll gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, this discourse, and I don't have it. How can I guess I can just share a tab over here. Share a screen, because I just want to pull up some other, excuse me, at least the rest of this in Matthew. Excuse me, because it does go. I hope this is going to continue sharing. Come on, there we go. Matthew 24. I'm so used to doing that on a Mac that doesn't work on Windows. All right. Do we want NIV? Let's do, I like the NLT for just reading. All right, real quick. So here, if anyone tells you, look, here's Jesus, don't believe him. Gather the elect. Now learn a lesson. Okay, so this, and I'll pull up Luke. That slideshow, I don't know that I ever finished it, but I definitely stopped. Then at the last, no, sorry. Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things, you can know his return is very near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass from the scene until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear. So when you see all these things happen, my assumption is that Jesus is calling you back. So knowing that he kind of gave the culmination, the end there. Let me zoom in. I'm sorry, guys. My bad. Okay. There we go. So knowing that Jesus just kind of gave the full culmination. This is, Jesus' second coming that's the climax of the show, so to speak. And he calls them back and he says, when you see these things, you can know that his return is very near. So he's clearly talking about something, this very near. This point is before his return. So he's bringing us back to, at the latest, verse 28, 29, maybe No. Yeah, so he's bringing us back way up here, right? When he switches here to talk about the fig tree. When the branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. When you see all these things, you can know his return is very near at the door. However, no one knows the day or the hour when these things will happen, not the angels in heaven, nor even the Son himself. Only the Father knows. When the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. That is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. Two men will be working together in the field. One will be taken, the other left. Two women will be grinding flour at the mill. One will be taken, the other left. This verse gives me some trouble. I know it gives other people trouble. I tend to look at it, right, like who was taken and who was left in the days of Noah. Only Noah and 7 other people were left. Everybody else was taken. It just popped open to show me ads again. Hold on something. Oh, I clicked the button. Not bad. Matthew 24. There we go. So you too must keep watch, for you don't know the day when your Lord is coming. Understand this: if a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into. You also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. A faithful, sensible servant is the one whose master can give the responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. If the master returns and finds that servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put the servant in charge of all he owns. But if the servant is evil and thinks, my master won't be back for a while, and he begins beating the other servants, partying and getting drunk, the master will return unannounced and unexpected, and he will cut the servant into pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So Jesus, he's talking about us, right? We're the servants. We're the ones who, he wants to return and find us doing a good job, not beating the other servants, partying and getting drunk. I don't know. Is that where we are? It kind of feels like online a lot. It feels like we beat each other up constantly. I know iron sharpens iron, but sometimes it feels a little more aggressive than that. See, so you two must keep watch. You don't know the day, hour's coming. Again, going back to this Noah one, because I didn't mean to skip there. People don't realize what's going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. That's the way it's going to be when Jesus comes back. I don't think the world's going to catch on. So far, it doesn't seem like they're going to catch on, or they have caught on. Jesus kind of indicates here that they're not going to know what's coming. It's sad because it's not like it's not all been written in the book for a while. But that is, they're not going to know. Jesus even says it again. He says, I'm going to come back unannounced and unexpected. Let's see. Parable of the 10 bridesmaids. So the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The 5 who were foolish didn't take enough oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra oil. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, they were roused by the shout, "Look, the bridegroom is coming. Come out and meet him." All the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. Then the 5 foolish ones asked the others, "Please give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out." But the others replied, "We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourselves." While they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside calling, Lord, Lord, open the door for us. But he called back, Believe me, I don't know you. So you too must keep watch, for you don't know the day or hour of my return. I think it's, kind of clear what's being taught here. The 5 foolish ones, it's not that they didn't expect it. It's not that they didn't know what was coming. It's that they waited too long. Basically, they waited until the last warning, right? There's what it says. Look, the bridegroom is coming at midnight. That's it, right? You got all the way to the end. They knew enough to have their lamps. They knew enough to be bridesmaids, and they were foolish enough to think that they could just be reckless for a little bit more time, right? Well, he's been delayed. He's not coming for a while. Just what Jesus was just saying in that last parable. These foolish virgins in this parable are the same people who are, beating their fellow servants or out getting drunk. They're the same people, just different parable. And I think that's what's, it's not enough to know. It's not enough to know that one day it's going to get there, and you know what to do when you get there. Basically, you need to put your life jacket on now. You need to have the oil in your lamp now, because if you don't, this is the outcome. And it didn't take enough oil for their lamps. I wonder, like, they had some oil. Again, they knew enough. They had lamps, they had oil, but they didn't have enough. Going back to what Jesus said, the one who perseveres to the end will be saved. You have to have oil to persevere. It's all about being prepared, and it's all about being prepared for this to take a while. Jesus, over and over, he's like, look, the guy's going to be delayed. I'm going to be delayed. It's going to take a while. They've said since the beginning, when is the coming of the Lord? Everybody's always said it's going to happen. This is a long race. It's a long race, and I think we need to just stay prepared. Now Jesus kind of shifts. He's not talking so much about the end. He talks about the kingdom of God, and tells us, if we've not been faithful with what we've been given, we're going to regret that. We're going to pay for that, so to speak, if we don't. And if you just take your light and you hide it under a bushel, you take your talents, you never use them. You take this gospel and you never share it. Which one of these are you? Are you the one who knew enough to fear your master, right? Are you the slave who buries the talent, knows enough to fear the master, but is whatever the reason is, right? They just don't do their master's business, and when the master returns, he finds that out. Or are you the one who takes it and buries it and earns more? Or are you the one who takes it and invests it and puts it to work and earns more? Are you the one who really, really produces, right? Are you the 30, the 60, or the 100-fold? There doesn't seem to be any such thing as a replacement Christian, right? We don't just do enough. Like when you get saved, it's not supposed to end with you. You've got a job to do. When you get born again, you've got a job to do. You have a commission, your orders given to you by God. You're to go out and create disciples. And that means you have to share, you have to teach, you have to exemplify these things. And if all you do, I'm afraid this is what we see here. If all you do is you get saved, and it can change you, it will change you. but you don't ever do anything. You don't ever grow the kingdom. You don't ever do any work for the kingdom, right? I'm not saying everybody has to be an evangelist, but if all you do is receive the gift and you never do anything else, you're going to wind up, best case scenario, at the judgment seat, right? Everything about your entire existence is going to be consumed by that fire. You're going to be left. You'll be saved through it, but only as through fire. You've got to, we're supposed to produce, right? He's the root, we're the vine, we're the branches. Where does the fruit grow? Not on the root, it grows on the branches, and we've got to be the ones who produce. And so now we get to the final judgment, and for what it's worth, I think this reading in Matthew 25, it does kind of complicate a lot of the time when you're reading Revelation. Revelation appears to split things up. I think Revelation adds time that is omitted elsewhere. But here we see Jesus saying, when the Son of Man comes in his glories and all his angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered in his presence. And he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right and his goats at his left. And the king will say, that's Jesus, to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick, you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. And then these righteous ones, those of us who are saved, those of us on the right, the sheep, are going to say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty, give you something to drink, a stranger to show you hospitality, or naked to give you clothing? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth, when you did it for the least of one of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me, right? Because we've got the same spirit as Jesus lives in us. And that's why he's able to say, when you did this for the least of one of these brothers or sisters, you were doing it for me. And then the king will turn to those on his left and say, away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his demons. I was hungry, you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, you didn't give me drink. I was a stranger, you didn't invite me in. I was naked, you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me. And they will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and not help you? And he will say, I tell you the truth, when you refuse to help the least of these brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me. And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous will go into eternal life. I don't think 26. Jesus. When Jesus finished saying all these things, Passover begins in 2 days. Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. So this was one of the last major teachings that Jesus did before the final week, right? The Passover, the plot, the betrayal, the trial, if you can call it that, and ultimately the crucifixion, and then the resurrection. But this was his last major teaching, and it was on the subject of the end, right? Let's go back to Matthew 24 and just see, when will these things happen? When will the temple be destroyed? And what will be the sign of your return and of the end of the world? So the New Living Translation translates a little differently than whatever version I used in my slides. I don't remember now. Maybe NASB, maybe ESV. I don't know. That was the question, and Jesus goes through and he answers it. He gives a timeline. He gives some warnings, some things to look out for, ways to basically orient yourself within the timeline. When you see this happen, know that you're here, or if you see these things happening, like, these are not good things to measure by, like, just because there's earthquakes and wars and rumors of wars, like, these are just the birth pains. If you've ever gone through childbirth, that makes sense. Or if you've been, I've never gone through, but I've been around people who've gone through it, and there were there were things that happened that were not the birth, though they were signs that the birth was coming. And that's what Jesus is warning about. And it's, we see it so much nowadays. People, every little thing is a sign. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, I believe I heard it said the rapture is supposed to start. I don't know exactly what it means that it will start, because Jesus does describe it. He'll send out his angels with the mighty blast of a trumpet, and they'll gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of earth to heaven. It's a very quick event. I'm not going to go into, there's a ton of other scriptures that we could look at that talk about specifically this one event here that everybody's focused on. But that's not Jesus's point. Jesus, yes, he tells us this is our redemption and this is the end. This is what happens at the end, but there's so much before that. And for us, it's about living every day ready, both for Jesus to come back and also to just do our job, to just tell the gospel, to just share Jesus with people and let them know these are the things we have to do, and we can't take our eye off of that ball. We can't get distracted and bogged down in the things of this world. We've got to keep pushing on towards this end, and we have to be able to do it without getting deceived and distracted, because they're going to try to convince us. I think personally, I think there's going to be, Jesus is going to come back, and we need to know what's coming. We need to know what Jesus told us, how to recognize what's coming, because otherwise I think that's it. If it's possible, they will deceive even the elect, right? If possible, even God's chosen ones. That's what's coming. Isn't going to be something that's so satanic and so fleshly that it only appeals to people who don't know God or don't know anything about God. I think it's going to come and it's going to look a lot like the truth. And we need to be able to discern the difference between right and almost right. And with that, I think I'm out of slides. I'm out of scripture for at least tonight. It's 20 till midnight now. I hope this video is coming through better for anybody who's watching. It's clear on one screen and blurry on the other. Thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. Appreciate it. God bless. We'll talk to you tomorrow.